Hey there. This is a reading for Cancer. You know, whatever placement you want to go by, but I do want to wish a happy birthday or a happy belated birthday to all the solar Cancers out there. My name is Vincent, if you don't already know, and I am using the Tarot Yohualli Ehécatl, which got the box right here so you can see. I'll put it down in the description for those of you that are interested. It's by an artist that goes by MiCorazonMexica on Instagram and on Etsy. Highly recommend their work. It's beautiful stuff. Now, I actually did a reading for you already, Cancer, like about 2 weeks ago, maybe a little less, a little sooner. And I don't know, it just didn't feel like it hit the mark for me, and I didn't want to upload it, so we're trying again. It's been really busy on my end, so I haven't really had the chance to sit down and do this. We're going to see what comes through, okay? I brought out my Druidcraft tarot deck. I'm not really sure what compelled me to do so, and I don't even know if I'll use any cards from it today, but I'm keeping it here just in case. Somehow it feels like it's maybe connected to your reading in a way. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess we'll start now since I got these cards that came rolling out. The most prominent card for me is Olin, Movimiento, which is like movement, or I think Olin is typically associated with earthquake in the sense that it's kind of like a destabilizing force. It's the constant change that sort of dictates the unfolding of the universe. In the traditional deck, this might be the world card. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that. So perhaps being in a state of transition, something in your life is being shaken up. I was actually contemplating the nature of Cancer before I even turned the camera on today, and was thinking about that state of transition anyways, because the beginning of your sign, 0 degrees of Cancer, is the northern solstice point. And so from there, the basically 6 months of the year from the winter solstice until then is all the sun moving at a northward course, you know, moving slowly towards the equator and then at the equinox above the equator. And it's at the solstice point that it starts to move southward again. And so Cancer, also being ruled by the moon, represents this very changeable state, this transition state. You know, typically Cancer is associated with like changeable moods, changeable emotions, and it's because of these associations and these astronomical principles that it's associated with these things. Given the fact that there's a lot of emphasis on your sign right now with the sun being there, but also with Jupiter being there for about the next year or so, you know, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of emphasis on Cancer right now. I feel like a lot of eyes are on you, and a lot of the choices that you're making might have really, I don't know why critical was the first word to come to mind, but very far-reaching consequences. And I don't say consequences in a negative term. I feel like a lot of us hear consequences and think, oh no, something bad is going to happen. I think maybe results is a better word. Something about the choices that you're making where typically they're kind of inconsequential, don't really have any far-reaching effects. I feel like right now it's actually different from that. Your choices and your words are having far-reaching implications for where your life is taking you, where your life is moving you. And then flanking either side of this card, we have 2 flint cards, which is the swords suite. And we have Hueytecpat, which is like the Ace of Swords, and then we have the Three of Flints, which are three swords. And I'm trying to make sense of their position relative to Olin. This card, I don't know why the first word that's coming to mind, or it's like self-sabotage. Usually when I see the Three of Swords or see this card, I think of, the words of other people having a negative and demeaning effect on us. Like somebody said something terrible about you and it's kind of weighing heavily. But in this case, for whatever reason, I'm seeing it more as like it's your own internal dialogue with yourself. There's something about like a limiting construct or a limiting sequence of thoughts. Maybe you have like different ideas of where you want to move your life, and they're at odds with one another, and I'm kind of like being called to think about the sources of where these ideas are coming from. There could be like, wait, Dekpat, I feel like this is an idea of your own construction. It's something that you want to do. It's something that you've thought about doing. It's kind of invigorated with your passion and your excitement, and it's like a crystal clear vision of where you want things to go, but you're being it's almost like something is compelling you to be at odds with that. It's like, yes, I want this, but maybe it's I'm not worthy enough for it, or maybe it's I don't have the money to do this. I don't have the resources or the network available to me in order to actualize this idea. Or maybe that's just what other people are telling you, because again, with this card, I think of a lot of times like gossip, or like just people harboring negative thoughts about you, or maybe negative isn't the right word, but doubting your abilities and doubting your capabilities if you are not yourself doing that. It's like you're externalizing that and having that reflected to you through the people that are around you. It's really interesting. And part of the message with this card, I feel like a lot of times we like to think that in order to make changes, in order to move in the directions that we want to go, in order to make our lives take the shape that we want them to take, we often feel a lot of pressure to like completely override and change everything that we've been doing, maybe completely changing where we live, where we work, what we eat. And to a certain extent that can all be helpful, but I think part of the message is like really considering if it's necessary to do these grand gestures and make these really radical changes in order to start actualizing whatever this idea is, whatever this direction that you find yourself looking in. You can take small steps, baby steps. Take your time, making sure that you're really paying attention to the details. There's not... I just feel like there's not like a rush. Like whatever changes that will be required of you are going to sort of arise spontaneously, maybe suddenly, and you're just going to deal with them in the moment that they arise, but you don't need to force the changes, if that makes sense. I feel like that's sort of the impression that I'm getting. And maybe up until this point you've been kind of really trying to make something happen, to really force something to happen, and it might have felt like you're swimming upstream against a really strong current. And it's like, if it feels that way, I mean, sure, it can sometimes be a test of strength, and it can develop your character to surmount these obstacles and to exert the effort necessary to move on to the next stage. But it doesn't always have to be a struggle. Sometimes it's okay to just allow the current to take you somewhere. Maybe this fighting is actually taking you further away from where you're trying to get. It's okay to follow the path of least resistance. I think that's kind of a Taoist axiom, or whatever the correct term is for that. Let's draw maybe one or two more cards. Let's see. Okay, so there's just like a lot of air energy coming up. So, well, first card that came out was Telpocatl, not Tecpat. It's the either the warrior or I think it's the warrior of Jade, which is the equivalent of page in this case, I think. Telpocatl. Just based on the iconography, it looks very much like a page to me. So somebody who's kind of very much coming up in the beginnings of actualizing and giving practical form to an idea. Perhaps you working on this. I'm not sure what this is. It's like a magnum opus. It just feels like your great work, at least where you are now in life. Like, it feels like something that you've been working towards for a while, that's been taking a lot of your thought energy, a lot of your focus. Whether or not it's something that you're like actually working towards in the real world, it's very much on your mind. And this is like the beginnings of bringing it into form, of working towards it. But this card is being crowned by the Six of Flint. And this card to me is kind of putting like an underline on what I was saying earlier about needing to change things, needing to, specifically in this case, like moving into a new location because we feel maybe unsupported by the people that are around us. This Three of Flints here, maybe feeling like we don't have the opportunities available to us that we need to actualize whatever this is. And it's like the grass is greener somewhere else. And if that's the case, because like I said, it's not going to be true for everyone, but if it's the case that you are being sort of forced into relocating in order to make this work, it feels really far away. Obviously we have the air element, so it's like already thinking about like airplanes, but like you're crossing water with this six of flints here. But specifically with this, I'm almost seeing this as like the helm, or like the front end of an airplane, and then this is sort of like the rear end, and these are the passengers in the middle. It's conveying long distances, it's conveying faraway places. But it could also represent a transition from one framework of thought, like one maybe integrating new ways of. There's an airplane right there. So maybe it is very literal. But it could also represent a transition from the air and water elements into a new form of the mental sphere. You have new thought patterns, new affirmations that you're telling yourself, maybe new people around you that are saying things that are contrary to whatever other people were saying to you or about you in the past. And it's helping you to process the underlying emotional landscape that you're passing over. A little emphasis. It's not just the moon and the sun that have an effect on the tides. Like, I don't know if any of you have lived near the sea or been to the sea, and you can kind of see that process unfolding. But it's also very much tied into the wind. The wind has a huge impact on the sea state. It doesn't necessarily change the tides, but it can definitely, move the water, move the emotional landscape, and give it shape, give it form. If the wind is relatively calm and still, the sea state will be very calm and still. If the wind is very tumultuous and blowing quickly and violently, the waves in the water will reflect that. And it's sort of like conveying this process of like utilizing your mental energy to shape and reshape your emotional landscape, emotional presence, your I'm hearing like your acceptance of the situation, whether it's the acceptance of where it is now or the acceptance of where it's going. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. And I'm coming back down here to this page of jade, this pentacles page. I think it's youth. I can't remember. I need to look back at the court cards for this deck. Doesn't really matter. The impression that I get here, especially with the monkey headdress, or what appears to be a monkey headdress, is to retain a sense of playfulness, a sense of openness, and a willingness to explore and engage with the situations that are unfolding around you without so much heaviness, without feeling so serious and without placing too much importance on them. Because it's probably really important that this process unfolds successfully, but being constantly worried about it throughout the entire process isn't going to help you in the long run. It's gonna fry you. You're gonna exhaust yourself if you're just constantly stressing out about the outcomes. So rather than focusing on the outcomes, call yourself back to wherever you are in the process and play with it, dance with it a little bit, tinker around. Make every moment feel fun, pretty. You can toy with it in a way that affects the aesthetic aspect of the moment, or with the more emotive quality of the moment. I feel you have more capacity to change things, to change your approach, or to change your response, to change your perception of what's happening than you give yourself credit for. Because I feel like maybe part of the message here is also victimizing yourself amidst the circumstances, and saying that whatever emotions come up, whatever responses or reactions come up to whatever given experience you have in a moment, are outside of your control. And to some extent that's true, but who you are is fundamentally so far above and removed these tumultuous, transient experiences and thoughts. That to be enmeshed within them is to identify with something that isn't you. So anchor yourself in that unmovable place and let life move around you. Let it take you where it needs to take you, and trust that you have the inherent resources and strength within yourself to respond to the situations, rather than sort of autopilot yourself into reactions and freakouts. And if anybody's like looking for a sign, like, is it appropriate to move somewhere, to relocate somewhere? I'm getting really fixated on this idea. I feel like the energy is there to support this, but I feel like it's also, it's sort of making you ask yourself the question, is it necessary? If it's necessary to relocate, then by all means do, but really, really sit down and think about, is it you trying to escape something that makes you feel like less than, and putting physical distance between yourself and whatever that is? Or is it a matter of you not feeling like you have, like you're good enough to try whatever it is that you have to try where you are now? So maybe sit and think about that for a bit before you hop on the plane. I also keep staring at this wristband that the hand has in this card. And obviously it's not a watch, but it's making me think of a watch. And I'm getting like this image of this door that only opens when the sunlight passes through this particular stone circle at a particular angle and hits another particular stone circle by the door. And it's only like a few times, once or twice a day or once or twice a year, that it opens. And so it's like really emphasizing like this sense of perfect geometry in space and time, instead of trying to fight and force that door open when you think it's right. Maybe letting go and releasing and trusting that the door will open when it is right, when it is appropriate for you to move through it. Again, don't exert unnecessary effort trying to fight a situation that you're not going to change with that approach. I hope that makes sense. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, should I pull a card from the Druidcraft deck? I'm like, I don't think I need to. But I will, because it's here. We'll treat this as like a special for all the solar cancers that are having their birthdays. I just, something about it just feels appropriate somehow. Three of Wands, moving on to different ventures, new paths unfolding, new opportunities, but also a sort of stasis and trust The three is a very dynamic number. It sort of implies a state of change and transition, but it also implies a stillness. Like the single point between the binary. I think it's an interesting sort of, not contrast, but mirror to the Three of Flints that came out, the Three of Swords. Because to me, it's like the Three of Swords, the Three of Flints, it cuts away situations. It cuts and it tears and it separates, it divides, it inflicts pain. And then with the Three of Wands, especially with the imagery of this card, it's like you plant these ideas down where they are, and they sort of marry themselves into the land. The roots grow deeper and they spread and they expand, and there's growth and there's abundance. And it's kind of an interesting contrast, because with this Three of Flints, I'm thinking of like an axe chopping down the trees or whatever. But then new ones are planted in their place. And I know it's frustrating being told this, but it really does come down to your choice. I feel like if you want something enough, yeah, there might be obstacles on the way to get there, but I think fundamentally the universe is here to support you and is here to help you get towards what it is that you want. And maybe a lot of it is you standing in your own way. Also with this Three of Wands is the message of I don't really know how to kind of summarize it succinctly, but like starting things, planting crops, planting a field, planting trees, and sticking around to maybe watch them sprout and begin their process, and then just like moving on to something else and totally leaving those things behind that you started and not finishing them. And that's usually like an Aries trait. Like we're really good at starting stuff and having the initiative and the drive and the passion to push through the initial obstacles and to sort of explode into the world with this new revolutionary idea or method or practice, whatever it is. And then we move on because it's like, we did the fun part. Don't need to follow through, But like Cancer, you're like the next fulcrum. You're the next cardinal sign. You carry that momentum that was begun by Aries into the next stage, into the next transition. Aries sort of threw the ball and you caught it. And just, so to speak, not necessarily literally. I don't know why it got so bright. Now it's really dark. Okay, well, it is what it is. But yeah, I feel like there's a little more emphasis here on like sticking with it. Even if it feels like the going is tough right now and like you're constantly fighting, stick with it. It doesn't mean that you're giving up when you sit back and just trust in the process. It doesn't mean that you're surrendering with whatever negative connotations you may or may not have with that word. It's slowing down to appreciate and to integrate what you've learned and what you've gathered thus far, and figuring out where it is that your roots need to be planted, whether it's right where you are or in some distant, faraway land where the grass is greener. The grass isn't always greener somewhere else. Everything you could ever dream of and want can be right where you are. just a matter of you taking the opportunities as they're presented to you. Maybe they're coming to you on a plane. You know, maybe it's something that's reaching you from afar. It is totally changing and invigorating a new idea that you have or may have yet to have had. Well, with that being said, Cancer, I think we will end that there. Otherwise, I will ramble for the next 3 weeks. And then Leo will never get their reading. But yeah, I wish you all the best. Hope this helped and helps to kind of externalize whatever process it is that you're going through to figure out whatever this is. It's a tricky spot to be in, but I think you'll be fine. But yeah, wish you all the best. Take care.